Randy Orton stopped Kevin Owens from another Piledriver, so these two appear to be destined for WrestleMania. But should they be? We answer that next, so just keep watching. Welcome to the still terribly named Okay Not Okay podcast. I am the SportsZu, and today we're giving you 3 reasons why Randy Orton's retribution versus Kevin Owens should wait. With the doc out for the Elimination Chamber recap, neither of us got to talk about the incredible Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn street fight at the Elimination Chamber, so that's good for me because Sami obviously lost that one. Nonetheless, those two have such amazing chemistry, and the things they come up with easily make this a match of the year contender already. So Randy Orton then returned to save Zayn from a piledriver on the concrete surface, and then he RKO'd KO. And it sure looks like it's time for Orton and KO to square off at WrestleMania, and yes, that would be a great match if that's what we get, but I think we should slow that roll by about a month. And here are 3 reasons why Kevin Owens and Randy Orton should wait. Number 1, Orton and Owens are not the friends that you think they are, as Kevin Owens debuted against John Cena on the May 18th, 2015 episode of Raw, while he was still the NXT champ, to accept Cena's US Open Challenge. And then just 2 months later, on July 20th, 2015, on that Monday Night Raw, he faced off versus Orton in a 6-man tag in their first ever matchup. And the very next week, they went one-on-one for their first match ever on Raw, with Orton winning by disqualification. And this led to many battles over the years, with 22 total televised matches against each other, including 5 one-on-one matches, 5 other multi-person singles matches, and 12 tag team matches. And they have been opponents at 6 different PLEs, first on opposing sides of a traditional Survivor Series match in 2016, then on opposite sides of a tag match in 2017, then they were both in the Greatest Royal Rumble in 2018, and then they were both in a normal Royal Rumble in 2020, which is a feat in itself since KO especially never seems to be in a Royal Rumble match itself. Then in 2024, they were opponents inside the Elimination Chamber, with Orton eliminating Owens. And then finally at WrestleMania 40, they were in a triple threat match versus Logan Paul for the US title. And they were also supposed to have a match at Crown Jewel, but we know that one never got started. Now conversely, they've only been on the same team 7 times compared to those 22 times when they were on opposite sides, and 6 of those 7 were post-WrestleMania this year, including matches at Backlash and at Money in the Bank, with their only one prior team-up before 2024, when they were both a part of Team Raw for a traditional Survivor Series elimination match in 2019, which also happened to be the one year that NXT was included. So these two literally at no point prior to the SmackDown after Elimination Chamber of 2024 did they ever actually work together, and even that night was more about KO going after A-Town Down Under than helping Orton. So that's almost 9 years on the main roster for KO, when those two had no positive feelings for each other. And while they were never opponents one-on-one at a PLE, of course again they were supposed to battle each other at Crown Jewel, we can of course say that they were opponents at last year's WrestleMania. And since that is indeed the most recent WrestleMania, we simply cannot put that to the side. That takes us to topic number 2, where we fight forever. And so while this video is more about Orton and KO, we certainly cannot leave out Sami Zayn, because again, did you see that match? It was absolutely insane. I'm not sure we've talked about 5-star matches before, as the WWE has just 21 5-star matches since Dave Meltzer started giving them out in 1982. And this is actually a boom period for 5-star matches in the WWE, but we've still only had 2 5-star matches each year since 2022. And guess what? That street fight was the first 5-star match of 2025, so we've now had 7 5-star matches since 2022, and indeed, KO and Zayn have 2 of them, as their tag team match versus the Usos at WrestleMania 39 was the other. So to put it simply, there is no better storytelling and no better long-term feud in wrestling than these 2 crazy Canadians. So after that match, how could it possibly just a one-and-done match? Sami Zayn has simply got to get his shot to get even at KO, doesn't he? And yes, in storyline, he's very much beaten up after that match, but he has plenty of time to recover after getting help from Orton. And let's face it, the KO Zayn first WrestleMania matchup at WrestleMania 39 got a bit of a short shrift, as that was a limited crowd capacity at Raymond James Stadium, being the first match outside the Thunderdome. So while they will surely fight forever, let them finally fight at a raucous WrestleMania. And number 3, we need something to lash back at. Or if you want to be proper, something with which to lash back. So anyways, WrestleMania may be the time to finish this story, but we can't forget that there's a show the very next night after WrestleMania, because the story never really ends. And usually we have Backlash as the next PLE, but surprisingly it's not yet been announced, so maybe that Saturday night's main event in Tampa will be the next signature event. And I guess we also can't confirm that we will actually have a WWE draft taking place again just a couple weeks after WrestleMania, especially since we did just have that very terrible transfer window. Nonetheless, back to Backlash. Last year's Backlash had no WrestleMania rematches, and the closest thing to that was Bianca and Jade defeating the Kabuki Warriors for the women's tag team titles, because those 4 were in a 6-woman tag match at WrestleMania. And the 3 championship matches that we got at last year's Backlash in France were all completely separate from WrestleMania. So if we at least save KO and Orton, we can go right back to it for Backlash, or I guess for Saturday night's main event, whichever comes first. So how can we make that happen? Well, my WrestleMania prediction video, which I will link to down below, I did not have Orton returning at the Chamber. Instead, I had him call out KO on SmackDown, and then KO, of course, did not show up. So instead, Drew McIntyre claymored him out of nowhere, and indeed, I said that's all it takes to make a WrestleMania feud sometimes. And of course, I made that match because the rumors were that Drew McIntyre was not happy with his planned Damian Priest feud for WrestleMania, and I would say Randy Orton certainly fits the bill for a worthy WrestleMania opponent. And right now, it looks like Priest is still the plan regardless, but we can still get to this match, including on tonight's SmackDown, because we still have 6 SmackDowns, counting tonight, and 5 Raws before WrestleMania, which is still more time than a standard monthly PLE schedule, so there should be no problem crafting a good story here. So McIntyre has nothing to give but violence now that he's lost inside the Chamber, so maybe we can say he takes Damian Priest out of a US title match and injures him for a week or 2, so he needs somewhere to turn his violence elsewhere. And the same thing that I said in my video can still happen with KO ducking Orton by only appearing via car video, which is what he seems to like to do the most. And since McIntyre just needs more violence in his life, he can hit that Claymore out of nowhere on Orton to start off that feud when he's in the ring trying to get Owens to come out. And then on the Raw side, Sami Zayn can just go right on back to calling out KO, and why not? KO can actually show up to Raw for a couple of weeks instead of SmackDown leading into WrestleMania. And it's that simple. That means Orton just can't get his hands onto KO until after WrestleMania. So he has no choice but to shift his focus over to Drew McIntyre. And that gives us the best possible combination of Owens Zayn and Orton McIntyre. Then after Orton helps Zayn again at WrestleMania, KO can simply go right on back to fighting Orton post-Mania. And that is indeed the best way of how you lash back. Of course, if you don't go this route, whatever you give for Sami Zayn at WrestleMania simply won't be good enough. Unless, I do have one thought here, perhaps a certain masked luchador named El Generico can prevent Chad Gable from fixing his luchador problem. Nah, that's just not gonna happen. That's never gonna happen. So with that off the table, it sure seems like there's just nothing out there on Raw that will be good enough for Sami Zayn to have two good WrestleMania matches come out of Owens and Zayn. And no, McIntyre and Priest is fine, but I am not going to call it good. So do you want to see the combination of Orton Owens and Zayn TBD at WrestleMania? Or do you want to see Orton McIntyre and Zayn Owens round 2? Well, that seems pretty clear to me, but be sure to comment down below. And if you missed Doc's video yesterday about who should be next for each title, be sure to go right on over here and check that out. But until then, I'm the SportsZu, and this has been the OK Not OK podcast.